Yeah, so we'll start the session. So in the last presentation, I just made it how we are going to use our servlet, how the working procedure of servlet. Then later, one second, I've just made it. The room number, which one? PC1. PC1 you want? That one, I think I want to download it. Only you can just check the email. I can check my email also. No problem. From Kishan. Here. From Kishan. Kishan, okay. I don't know him. You would have not received it. No, I had every timetable with me, but I have not received with him. But I had timetables, complete timetable. This one only, I think so. Or first. No, this is exam. Exam. Okay. Yeah, this one. Updated academic timetable. Yes, TC1, no? 5TC1. This one. Open this one. Just open this. TC2. Next, this arrow. Okay. 210. Thank you, sir. The room is too congested, man. Yeah. So in the last session, as I discussed, so how we are going to use our servlets, different approaches, or how we are going to use our methodologies to make your servlet active. So that is first, as you know, the servlet class to be loaded, then the respective class and object to be created, then a init method is invoked, then a service method which is used to run your servlet, which is loaded by you, and we are going to use a method called as a destroy. I told already yesterday that destroy is used to free the memory which you are allocating for your object, right? So up to this we have done in my last session, that is up to your life cycle of your servlet. So coming to next, this is also I explained. So how we are going to use class loading and the instance, how it is creating, who is going to create the instance, and how your invoke method is called by using one interface, and that interface is called javax.servlet.servlet. So actually the javax.servlet is the main interface, or I can say it's a main package where we are going to inherit every interface from that one. Then, as you know, service method, and finally we are using a destroy method. So this is already we have done in my last session. So coming to my today's session. So once your servlet is installed, we are going to make what the servlet we are using, and actually what is the name of your servlet, and in your servlet what it's going to be containing. It's nothing but what it's giving a brief explanation about your servlet. So nothing but the description about the servlet which we are using, that can be defined or that can be used by one descriptor. I think yesterday also somewhat introduction about this descriptor we have discussed. That is what you call as a deployment descriptor. So what is a main responsibility? The main itself called deployment. You know what is meaning of deployment? Deployment is nothing but what? It's going to be gives information, or I can say giving the information about some, maybe it can be called as what? The information about maybe a servlet, or information about maybe the thing which we are using at the time, you take as a project example. So as you go for developing a project in your software engineering, we are going to what we are going to deploying the product as the last stage. What do you mean by deploying? So still your the sixth or seventh life cycle, making your product documentation and studying about analysis and the designing part, then coming into what testing, then debugging. So after completing everything, so what we are doing, we are going to deploy it. Deploy is nothing but releasing into the market, as we call as a deployment actually. So similarly, once you want to run your servlet over your web server, first you should know about some something about your servlet. So that will be given, the description will be given by a deployment descriptor. And where actually the name we are using, or where we are going to make this deployment descriptor in your servlet. So this can be stored, or this can be given by a file name called web.xml. This can be used, or this can be done with your file name called web.xml. So XML, you know what is XML? It's a type of one language we call it extended markup language. So it is easiest, one of the easiest, because uh, already a tax is predefinedly used. Only we need to give the information. Only we need to give the information about what we are going to use. So instead of creating a description in a text file, or instead of creating information on your DBMS database file or the raw data, we are going to use a web.xml as our deployment descriptor. So what is the purpose of this deployment descriptor? So this deployment descriptor will gives or deploys the information of a servlet. It is a one more thing we need to add it. So yesterday I think I have shown you the example also how your deployment descriptor is used. So suppose if you take an example, so just give me a second. So if you just, I'll try to make the deployment descriptor also parallel to with you. Just if you take, give me a second. I just want to show you what actually deployment descriptor will do. So if you try to open any NetBeans, any example, I'm not specifically about this example, just I want to share with you the how the deployment descriptor we are going to use. Just you take an example of some my first servlet only. You take, this is my one of my project which I have created, and I'm trying to opening that one. And just look at here, when you open your configuration file, just you can find web.xml here. So what is this web.xml is containing? Look at here, this first line shows what is the version we are using for the XML, and you can just make it here. This is called alias name. Alias is nothing but a duplicated, because initially we don't require to give what is my servlet name. It's called as the alias name of it, and the respective class which we are creating for that servlet. That's why it has been tagged. We are going to discuss in detail about the next presentation. That is the next slide. But just look at here, servlet class. It is a class file is creating, and that is going to be mapped with what? Same to which URL pattern we are going to display it, and what is my servlet name. 1 second. So like this, it has been clarity describes about your servlet which we are using. So that can be done by your deployment descriptor. Hope you are clear with this deployment descriptor. And coming to the continuity, just as I told you how it is going to be done. Look at here, what actually the servlet or deployment descriptor is maintained by web.xml. If you just check it out, I just now have shown with example also. So first name, whatever the name we are using, I don't call directly it as my servlet name, because I need to use it as alias name. What is the purpose of it? So it's a main for purpose of the security. So maybe chance, as you know, you already studied or are already aware of your network subject, there is a chance of hacking the data, or there is transfer stolen of your data. So to overcome this problem, we are providing first an alias name, then the original name of your wallet, sorry, original name of your servlet can be given here. So what is the servlet we are using? Validation. This is actual name we are using. So similarly, once we have defined the name of your servlet, I need to map that servlet. But as mapping also, I need to do what? First, name of my servlet. Once again, I'm using as what? Alias only. But when you click the particular button, the URL is redirected. The URL is redirected to some web page is going to be redirected some URL. And what is that URL pattern is called as roses. This is what you had it. So similarly, you can just look at here. When I just try to run hash first servlet, let's just make it what is the meaning of URL pattern here. So when I build this one, and when I run this project, just have a look at how it is going to be redirecting with your URL. I told the URL can be a slash first servlet. Just I will show you that also here only, because we need to have some clarity. So when I just call it, I'm inside my first servlet. So the URL, you can find it. This is the first servlet. At the top end, you can find as TC3 my servlet is my project name, and it is going to be redirected to which URL? First servlet URL. So same thing, just I'm showing here. First servlet URL pattern can be redirected. And to make this redirection, I'm using some time, session time that can be 30. So like this, the deployment descriptor can be placed in your web.xml. But as you go for a deployment descriptor, we are using different parameters. Previously, I showed only some of the parameters like servlet class, and servlet mapping. Like this, I have done. So to suppose if we want to initialize some parameters, so because previously we have written one small program to display what is my servlet name. But just suppose I need to write one program for finding of a strength of a length of a string or area of circle, or it may be a Fibonacci series, any program we want to write. At that moment, what we need to use some parameters. As we need to use parameters, so to initialize the parameters, we are going to use some of the tags. How we are using servlet name. So similarly, for initialization purpose, here I am using some parameters. And what is my parameter? As you want to initialize, these are the tags: init, param, and close of your tag of your XML. And in between that, you are using what is the name of your parameter and what is the value of parameter. And what is my parameter name? Instructor is my parameter. And what is the value you are giving to instructor? So my name, which I am going to be used. So like this, we can initialize the parameters also. So in XML, not only we are giving a description about your servlet, parallelly we can give description about your parameters. Sorry, we can just initialization of your parameters also can be done, and that initialization can be done using like the tags where we are using in my example. Not only that, not only initialization of parameters, just you can look at one more tag. What is the one more tag? To write the tag libraries. Actually, this is not implementing in the servlet. This is mostly used in your another framework we call as a struts. As I told yesterday, there are different type of frameworks we are having. That is, we had different type of frameworks we had having JSP, servlets, struts, beans, and etc. So similarly, the struts is also one of the example of your framework. So when you want to make tag libraries means what is the location of that one, and what is the URL. So description I'm giving in detail about libraries also, where actually this library file is stored for that particular servlet. Actually, we don't use servlet here because as it is applicable in the struts, so that can be written as an example. So tag, as previously what we are using init param, initialization of parameters. Now I'm using what? Tag libraries. So similarly, what the Tags we are using tag lib as your initialization of your tag, and closing of your tag library can be done /tag library. And similarly, when you want to make your tag description of your libraries, as where we are using actually the struts and beans, I told already this is applicable in the struts and beans, and where this file, what file, making library file is available at the location a folder name called webinfo. When you try to run your struts program, that we can add later, we can discuss that later, don't worry. When we are going to make that struts program, so the descriptor file is also creating one file which is also be an XML, but that there the XML file is containing where my libraries can be located. So that libraries can be located with a main folder, main header folder known as webinfo. There I'm going to have that file name with extension TLD, tag libraries description, as that file is going to be stored. So that we can discuss later, but as of now we need to discuss only two things. One is how we are initializing the parameters, that is a one thing, and one more thing is where the parameters, how we are going to discuss as previously. This is your initialization parameters, and this is what is a deployment descriptor is containing. And try to remember this XML file, not only initialization, we can have the library files location also can be easily find out. So when that time comes to struts, I will try to explain that also. Now when you come to this one, as important notes we need to remember, because when you try to write a simple servlet program, suppose if you do any modification to your servlet code, what is the meaning of servlet code? .java file. When you try to modify your .java file, right, once .java file is created, what you will do, you will build and compile. Once your .java file is compiled, what happens? Defaultly, it's going to create .class file, as all of you know. And this .class file is going to be stored in where? In your server. In its server. Which server? Either it may be a Tomcat server or it can be a Glassfish server which you are using. And that .class file will be stored in your server. Suppose if you do any small modification to your program, instead of giving some variable name or something, you have done modification, if you don't save that sublet, if you don't save, and if you don't go for clean and build, automatically what happens, previous output can be displayed and current output cannot be affected. That is a one important note, because every time .java file you are compiling, it's create a class file. But if you don't clean and build, previous class file will be affected and output can be shown as the previous output only, right? And one more thing is, for every servlet, in your alias name should be mandatory. I told yesterday, I told just now, and deployment descriptor, we need to use first alias name. As you know, what is the purpose of the alias name? I'm reminding you one second. The main purpose of the alias name is to provide a security to your XML file. To provide a security to XML file, we need to use an alias name. These two important things you need to remember till your servlets, till we are discussing about the servlets and execution process and everything. These two are very, very important for us, right? So this is about your something called your deployment descriptor. Now, servlet program creation steps. And here, this servlet programming creation steps, as yesterday, I think I have discussed with you. Don't worry, 1 second I am going to discuss. Actually, I need to upload this description, servlet programming steps in your e-content. I will just upload later. Now I'll just try to show you, if you want to run, or if you want to write a new servlet program, how we are going to be designed, how we are going to write. with a step-by-step process I will show you. Just if you see a step-by-step process, I made it as a document for you. So I'll try to show that also a step-by-step process. If you try to install your NetBeans in your system. So this is what the steps we need to have it. So first what we had it, you need to install an appropriate version of your NetBeans. I told already, don't go for latest versions, because if you go your latest version, some of the systems will not support your Glassfish server. Some of the systems is saying compatibility issues. So better you try to use a version 8.2 preferably. You try to take that source from the web URL. You already know it, where you are going to download it. I'll just, if you want, I can show that also. As a package, we had it. Give me a second, because it contains a complete compatibility pack. So you take from your Oracle site. So NetBeans 8.2 you can take with JDK, and you take, just find out oracle.com is the web URL you had it, and try to click this web URL. And if you already registered with that one, you just directly you are going to redirect to this page. Then you need to go for accept license agreement. You just find out here, if you had a 32-bit machine, you try to pick 32-bit operating system software. If your system is containing some 64-bit, as my desktop, as my laptop is a 64-bit, I have downloaded this file. What this file is containing, just look at here, Java SE and NetBeans O bundle. So combinedly we are going to get it. And after this, we need to install the enterprise edition also, Java JDK enterprise edition. And you try to take that also EE, because to run your NetBeans file, we need to have enterprise editions. So my better advice is go to download this Windows. If you are taking this 32-bit, you can go with this one. If you are using 64, you can go with this one. So after downloading that particular NetBeans software along with your Java SE, then you need to install it, because your exe file will be generated. So once you install, your page will be open like this. Directly your Tomcat server and your Glassfish server, whatever the server is operating with that one, automatically they are going to make the path available. No need to make your path manually. You can do like this. Once you install your NetBeans, right? You try to open your home page of your NetBeans. So initially I don't have any projects, just as a starting or startup page will be like this. Welcome to NetBeans. And if you want to make the use, or some tutorial documents are also available, and videos also available, you can go through it in detail if you want. If you don't want, please come down to the next one. As the next one, if you want to create your own project, so you are going to click on the file, new project we need to select. Click on file and new project. As what type of applications we are developing here, web applications. So when you click new, it will come types of projects. Either it may be mobile edition, it may be enterprise edition, or it may be web browse, or it may be simple core Java, or I can have PHP, Ruby, C++. Different type of projects is available. But here we are just, as we are dealing with a web applications, we need to select the second one. What is the second one? Java web. I have selected Java web. Then I need to open a web application. Then I need to have web application. So once you selected your web application, click the next button. Then it will open this, what you want to make your name of your project. So project name to be given from your side as your wish. Whether you can keep it as a web application, or if you are creating a area of circle, you mention as area of circle as your project name. Then if you want to make this as a main project, click the different buttons we had it, set as a main project. Then we are going to make the button so that go for next button automatically. It will go for server and setting. What type of server you are using? So as I told already, when you are installing your IDE, that is integrated development environment, the servers is a different types of servers are available. But as which server you are comfortable, either it may be a Glassfish or it may be a Tomcat or it may be JBoss, any server, WebLogic, which is a comfortable to you, you just try to select your server name, and if you don't have that server with you, click add button. Automatically, it is going to create. Automatically, it's downloading your server and allocating that path. And here you need to compulsory have enterprise edition, because as I told already, enterprise edition is a mandatory to run your web applications. And here enterprise edition also, there are different type of enterprise editions are available, maybe 5, 6, 7. It's go upgrading as of now. So you need to select your that one, and you need to just go for next button. And here the next button will come like this. We don't need to select anything, because as of now we are not dealing with anything. Server faces, struts, hibernate. We are not discussing anything. So don't make any selection here, and just completely you do it finish button. So once you're done with your finish button, it's going to create as a left hand side, automatically all these things will come to your picture as a default link. What is your project name? Web application 1. And these are some libraries, test libraries, packages, configuration file, web info, web pages, it will come. We don't need to create anything from our side. Everything will be created. And later, as we need to develop our first web application of servlet, as I told, servlet is used to write a code in the form of .java extension. So we need to just select the source packages of your default package and make a right click of it and click on the new. Then it will ask for what type of file you want to open, or what type of application you want to open. Is it HTML or JSP? As we are dealing with the servlet right now, we are going to select as a servlet. Then once you have selected as a servlet, then it is going to ask once again what is the name of your class name you need to create. Because I told, once you have created a servlet in the .java, so class, what I can say, class name to be created with the program which we are handling. It may be my servlet, or it may be area, or it may be a length of string, or it may be anything. So that name to be given as a class name for you. And other parts, don't touch any other parts here. That also be defaultly created, where we need to make your project name. Already we did made project name as a web application 1, and location of your source package automatically it will take, and just try to click the next button, so it will be redirected. And remember, my dear student, this is a very important. As I told, when you are creating any servlet, a deployment descriptor is a mandatory. So you need to make this as enable. You need to make this as a mandatory. If you don't make this as a mandatory, what happens is your XML file will not be created. This is a very important point. So initially it will be in the disabled mode. You make it as enable, then only your XML file is created. Then click the finish button. So automatically this .java file will be created for you. You have given what the servlet name, demo servlet Java. So the code, these are already some of the packages are importing. In next slides we are going to discuss what all these things, request, response, and everything we will see later. But defaultly all these packages will be imported. So here whatever the program you want to generate, this is what a program we are writing as an initially demo. I need to just make a information, hello servlet, or this is my first servlet, like this I need to represent. And but here as web you need to approach the server, you need to write some HTML code. So that's why here HTML code is going to be means by using a username and password and making a click event on your submit button. That page can be redirected to your web server, and execution of your servlet over your web server there, then it displays some output as some hello world or hello servlet or this is my first servlet. So for this purpose here I am creating one HTML file, and in HTML file some code we are going to be placed. So what is that some code we are going to place here? So input value is equivalent to some text box we are creating. Just look at here, and this is HTML file what we need to create to do write content. Here we are going to generate some HTML file. Look at here, input type is equivalent to what? Text. And what is the action we need to which type of which servlet to be executed as a clicking an action? Demo servlet. So you can find at left hand side our package servlet name is also demo servlet. So it should name match with this one, because once you click this button, an action you are performing, the server side, the servlet should be executed. And what is that servlet name? You need to mention it as form action is equal into demo servlet, and you are creating one text box with username, and you are creating with submit button as your value as a login in HTML. So once you have done with your HTML, then you are going to make the execution of your servlet. But before that, you are going with a deployment descriptor. You can find you already had some idea about your deployment descriptor. And what is this first one? Demo servlet. It is alias name. And what is the second one? The original name which we are creating for demo servlet. Similarly, what here we are going to make once again the URL where need to be redirected, and name of your servlet and your session time. And here we are going to make a description about your index file also. What is that index files? Once you are going to run this program, you are going to initially open index.html. You can find it at the left hand side, and that also making as a description part in your XML. So everything I can make as a description, because it is only for making a clarification of from our side that what is going on in my program. Make that we are giving some description about that one. So that can be done with with the help of your deployment. And here, as we mentioned a deployment, we are going to compile. I told already before your compilation, you need to go for clean and build. Yesterday, I think I have shown you how to make your clean and build. This is a symbol. Before your play button, you can find two hammers. One is directly to compile, one is go for clean and build. Always you try to habituate this one, clean and build. Then you need to make this play button to or run your program. So once you just make it as a run, automatically it is first redirecting to as what? A created text box. Already we created one text box. What is that? Name of you are going to enter. And once you click this login button, an action will be generated. What is my action? It is going to be redirected to your demo servlet. It's located in your server machine. So just look at here, demo servlet. This is what we have made it as a description, demo servlet. And what is the username you are using? This is not a secure manner, because we had a different type of methods like get and post. At the time of that get and post, I will try to explain these also. And nowadays, if you try to open any URL, you can find these things. When I try to open any Gmail account of yours, or you are going to create any URL address, suppose I am trying to open some account URL, just look at here. I opened this one. Actually, when you are not able to find any type of information here, only it's open some home dot Marwadi University dot AC dot in, and it is going to show you some number. So some of the URL will give a information as a secured manner, what we can call as get and post methods. Actually, we had, so that we are going to show you. As of now, just try to make how to make your first servlet program to run your laptops as a practical approach. This is what URL we are using in your deployment descriptor. Then what your username also you have given, we are going to display over your web URL address. So this is the main steps what we need to follow when we need to create your a first servlet application using your IDE environment. You may ask, sir, why can't you use another IDEs? Yeah, you can go ahead, no problem. But you can use an Eclipse, no issue in that. But the thing is, if you try to go with your Eclipse, you need to install your Tomcat separately and you need to set the path. So it takes some time to go for installation process. But if you already had a built-in version with you, it's a bit easy to go with your IDE environment of your NetBeans. So I suggest you people to try to install a NetBeans IDE. You already had a practice with your Eclipse, no issue. It's up to you, right? So this is a small example which I have shown you how to create your first servlet program. Now, coming back once again, as I told in the previous session, that is our previous slides, so deployment descriptor is going to be used different types of tag files. One is initialization of parameters. One is what is the name of your servlet, what is an alias name you are using. So similarly here, whenever you are using a configuration file, so you can find a configuration file in your application also. Just I will like to show you. This is my configuration files. I told already to you. So this configuration files is containing some of the XML files here. One XML file is a web.xml which gives information about your description. So similarly, not only that one, what he's trying to explain is refers a configuration file for what purpose? For Articraft. So to make some model which is deployed on your IDE environment. Actually, this deployment descriptor, if you say your Java or your enterprise edition, compulsory we need to deploy because it is mainly the important tool which we are going to make your application in easier manner, or what we are, if suppose any person, those who are not aware what we are doing, if you try to open your descriptor file, then automatically he will get back to you that okay, description is about your, is the person is using some example program to do some tasks. So like this, some description will be clearly mentioned. So that's why this deployment tool not only providing a description with specific options will also be there. So that options I can show you, as I told just now, security settings is also be possible with your deployment descriptor. But where we are using is, if you want to come back to these security settings, we need to first have a clarity about your get and post methods. Otherwise, I can't go for how we need to make these security settings. So the deployment descriptor, not only description about your thing we are doing, and it provides other than that, and what is the other than that is the security setting, and about that one specific configuration already we know it. So where we are using, just we can see in the next thing. And as I go for, once again the same thing I am saying, deployment description only. So where we are using the deployment descriptor as a web XML, I told already, and where it is going to restore, it is going to restore in your web info directory. Just you can find the web info directory, there we had it. If you open your application as a first application, I'm trying to open a web page and I'm going to make a web info. There you can find the web XML. Just I'm trying to open your file of your web XML once again. So this is my web XML. So what I'm just trying to say is where the actually the deployment descriptor is, deployment descriptor will be in the main folder which is named as web info. This is my web info, that only I'm saying, and must be reside, compulsory must be reside as a web info directory in the web application route. So suppose you take Java enterprise application, the deployment descriptor. If you take this is a there are two types of editions as you go for SC and EA and ME. There are different type of editions are available. For edition to edition, the descriptor file is going to be different from a name in the name point of view, as I'm saying. It sometimes it can be web.xml, sometimes it can be application.xml. The same thing I just made it here. So there are two types of deployment descriptor is available for us: Java Enterprise Edition descriptor and runtime deployment descriptor. This is a very important for us. The second type of descriptor is what? a runtime deployment descriptor. So as we already seen about your EE deployment descriptor previously, that is your web.xml. When you go for a descriptor called as a runtime, what is the main purpose of this runtime is, though this runtime descriptor is mainly used to make your server as an active state. I'll just made it here as an example, as you just you can come back here. So runtime descriptors are defined. Runtime descriptors are defined by whom? Not by ourselves. As a vendor of each container implementation, when you are going to implement any type of an application, so vendor is going to define some of the web container. So it's actually this runtime descriptor is restored in your web container, and he will decide what type of configuration, or when you try to run any application. Example I am saying, when you try to run any application, what happens? You are going to redirect it to some server. Either it may be a glassfish or it may be a tomcat, I told already. So what type of configuration you need to have, that can be done here clearly as your runtime description deployment. So server name also you're clearly mentioning there, but not yourself. Your vendor should mention. No, as use just I will show you later when some of the programs, when I try to execute, it's going to open your Tomcat server. Some of the programs, when I'm trying to execute, it opens your Glassfish server. Is it done by me? Yeah, as a vendor, I'm doing. I'm just frequently saying that some applications are preferably I need to use my Tomcat server. Some applications I need to use Glassfish server. So to make that one, a vendor should decide which type of server you are going to use. So that also be deployment descriptor will decide, but not as EE descriptor, and this descriptor named as enterprise edition descriptor. Sorry, it's a runtime deployment descriptor will decide. That only I'm just trying to say about your runtime. At the runtime, which type of descriptor you need to use decided by your runtime. And here we are going to see some of the programs as an example with different methods. As a first method or first example, which already we have seen, only we are using what? Simply one interface. What interface? A servlet interface we are using and we are implementing. And I'll show one more example to you. That example making a focus on what? Length of enter string, and what they are using there. We are using one method. What is that method? Is called do get method. Just we need to find out the difference between them. And coming into my third example program, area of circle, and there I'm using, instead of do get, do post. Here we can find some little bit difference. When we had a clarity about this is, when you try to execute that program, when they are redirecting to URL, there you can find the differences between get and post, which is a secured method, which is an insecure method, we can find it. And one more example is adding of two numbers. And there I am using a simply a servlet concept, taking two numbers, 1 and 4, and finding the sum of the term. But there I'm not using, there I'm using a simple servlet method, which I'm going to be done. So just as first will come as a basic example, I told already as a basic example is my first servlet. We already done with an execution previously. Look at here, just I want to show be clear, when I try to make this build and clean. So which type of, here I can clearly mention clean, and everything is clean. And I made it a run. I made it a run. Which type of server is generated there is Tomcat. Apache Tomcat 8.0.27, and here also you can just find it out what type of server we are using. You can just look at here also with your the Tomcat server with a name of your the things which we had it clearly you can show in this example. And you take a second example, as I told, a second example is area of circle. This is my area of circle program. You take and just look at here, when I try to clean and build and try to run it. Look at here. I'm going to use what? Glass fish server. I told is a vendor will decide it. The vendor will decide what type of server we are using at the runtime. It's previously for your application it goes Apache. Now when I go for area of circle, it goes Java DB process, database process, and it uses the help of your what server? Glass fish server. And here it is asking as what is you are going to give as an input as a circle. So I suppose you have given 2 and it's immediately click or it's immediately make it area of a circle evaluation by using your formula. You know what is area of your circle? So r square, or you are going to have some formula for it, and using that formula then you are going to create your area of circle. And similarly you take an example of adding of 2 numbers. Just simple example I need to show you, right? Don't worry, later we can discuss in detail about it. So just I want to show what is a deployment descriptor varies between each and every program. And if I go for a compilation, clean and build, and once again it need to create one server. What is a server here? Once again I am using a class fish server, and here I need to give adding of 2 numbers means input to be taken as what? Number 1 some you take as a 12, number 2 you take as a 21, and once you had has been, it's going to be make it answer as what? 33. So this is another program which shows the addition of your 2 numbers. So similarly, a last and final example is the strength of your string, or I can say count of number of characters which you have supplied at the time of as an input to you. So clean and build once again, and I made it usage, make it as once again as a run, and once again my glass fish server is activated here, and I'm going to enter some string name. So I'm going to enter some string, just count the how many number of characters we had it. So dask is a 4. I need to get it as an answer. Yes, I need. And look at here, when you take your previous 3 examples, you don't find any type of string you are entered here. This is not a secure method, my dear students. Use the string is equivalent to dask. Clearly what string I entered is giving information in the URL address. So it is what for what program I'm saying length of my string. So length of my string is using what method? Do get method. So I can conclude that the do get method doesn't have any security. Why? Why, sir? Whatever I am giving as an input, whatever I am giving as an input, that has been displayed in your URL address. But as you go for area of your circle, what is the number I have given as a radius, that number I am not able to show in my URL. So you got some clarification here, but in detail I'll just come back to you your do get and do post method in the next presentations we had. That only we are just making how where or what is the difference between do get and do post. We can just add a clarification in the next presentations, and don't worry about it. Just as a simple example I need to show, and what is the difference between get and post, here we are going to add it, right? So just this is about some of the example programs what we need to see. And next we are going in detail about each and every this servlets. When you take any source package of your Java, you take area of circle as a concept. There I told we are going to use different type of packages, input output package, servlet, and that can be extended something and making a request and making a response. So each and every line of code, what actually it contains is going to be defined, or it's going to be designed, or it's going to be explained by the next slide, what you call as a types of servlets. What you call is types of servlets. How many types of servlets we had, and how it is inheriting one by one. Just this thing we can just continue in my next session. So as for today's session, we are mainly focusing on what? A deployment descriptor is the main point we have concentrated, and after that this deployment descriptor, and we have done how many types of deployment descriptors we had and how it is executing uh, with the different examples, and what is the difference between your runtime deployment descriptor and normal deployment descriptor, and where we are giving a description. Everything we had it in this session. So as it's time to wind up the session, so any doubts you can ask. If you have any doubts, my dear students, if you have any doubts, please, you can. If no doubts, if everything is clear, please make me a message in the chat box that everything is clear, sir, or any doubts you can ask. Clear. Right. So you do one thing, post your attendance 1 second in the chat box. Please, everyone give clearly your TD1 or TD2. Mention your roll number by giving TD1 and TD2, then you can just make it. Yes. So once you have given attendance, you can leave the meeting. Those who have given attendance, they can leave the meeting. Yes, Vivek, any doubts you had? Vivek and Ali, just you can give your attendance and you can leave. There were any difference? Yeah, there were any difference? Yes, between what? Using nothing difference will come. Both are servers only, but as a futures point of view. So if you are taking some of the applications with a type of applications, when we are executing, sometimes your server will not support the compatibility issue. I'm saying, server's point of view, there will not be issue. Both are used to run your client applications only, but when the problem will come is at the time of compatibility issues, or the size of your application when you are developing, some of the code which you have written cannot be understandable by your application server. At that time the problem will create. That's it. Not that much the difference we had it. Yeah, can post your number. Yeah, one more. Ali is there. Ali, any doubts you had?